Okay, let's dig into these articles. We've got 7 quite different pieces today, but all sort of touch on adaptation and how systems respond to change.
Yeah, a really diverse set. We're starting with cricket songs.
That's right, Pacific field crickets in Hawaii, and there's this invasive fly.
Right, the parasitoid flies. They arrived maybe 30 years ago, possibly linked to climate change, though the article doesn't focus on that. The key thing is they hunt by sound.
And male crickets sing to attract mates, so bad news for the singers.
Exactly. The flies lay eggs in the singing males, killing them. A really strong selective pressure.
So what happened? Did they all just go quiet?
Well, something amazing happened about 20 years ago on Kauai. A mutation appeared. A silent one.
Silent.
Yeah, the males still did the wing rubbing motion like they were singing, but nothing. No sound.
Ah, so the flies couldn't find them.
Precisely. And because it offered such a huge survival advantage, this silent trait spread incredibly fast through the population there.
Wow. But how did they attract females then?
That's the next twist. Researchers found other populations that still sing, but differently. Their songs include these subdued purrs and rattles, different frequency, different amplitude.
Quieter.
Quieter, yeah. Quiet enough to hopefully evade the flies, but still loud enough, apparently, for the females to hear them. It shows really rapid evolutionary change.
The crickets adapted. Did the flies keep up?
Well, scientists compared the Hawaiian flies with their ancestors from Florida, the Florida flies, mostly tuned into that typical 4-6 kilohertz cricket song range.
And the Hawaiian ones.
Their hearing had broadened significantly, like 6 to 20 kilohertz. They became sensitive to a much wider range of sounds.
So they could hear the new songs?
Yes. Experiments proved it. They put flies on little treadmills, played the sounds. The Hawaiian flies were definitely more responsive to the new purrs and rattles than the Florida ones.
So it wasn't like a perfect counter-adaptation. The flies just got better at hearing everything nearby.
Kind of, yeah. They became more generalist listeners, you could say, able to track various changes in the cricket songs, not just one specific new frequency.
And you mentioned the females. They had to adapt too.
They must have. If female crickets had only preferred the old loud song, these new quiet singers wouldn't have been successful. Their genes wouldn't have spread. So female preference had to evolve too, becoming less picky.
It really highlights how fast evolution can happen, especially with insects and their short generations.
Exactly. And understanding this helps us think about, invasive species success or how native species might cope with new threats. It's all about resilience and plasticity under pressure.
Okay, let's shift gears completely. The next article takes a pretty critical look at India's education system.
Yeah, it argues that despite various efforts, including the big national education policy or NEP 2020, the system is kind of clueless, that's the author's word, about graduate employability in today's market.
A strong claim. What's the reasoning?
The piece suggests that after decades of prioritizing equity, maybe at the expense of excellence, the result is that neither has been fully achieved. Graduates are struggling to find jobs that match their education, and degrees, it claims, often aren't worth much practically.
Are there numbers to back that up?
It cites a graduate employability rate for 2025 at 42.6%, which is barely changed from 44.3% in 2023. And knowledge-intensive jobs were only about 11.7% in 2023. It also criticizes the NEP's multiple entry-exit options, suggesting they're just leading to low-quality e-commerce jobs.
So the author isn't a fan of the NEP?
Not really. Calls it an outdated model, financially questionable for India now. It says there's lip service to ideas like Indian knowledge systems, but no real implementation plan. And importantly, it notes no industry people were on the drafting committee.
What about university rankings? India often highlights improvements there.
The article questions that too. Points out that while, yes, 11 universities are in the QS Top 500, India's overall rank is still over 100. And research publication quality, while slightly better, is still only 16th among 19 G20 nations. It also flags the commercial side of these ranking agencies.
It also mentions some past big projects.
Yeah, things like the New Millennium Project, the Akash tablet, questioning their value for money, saying the public wasn't really clear on what they were supposed to achieve.
And innovation. We hear a lot about India's startup scene.
Right. The Global Innovation Index rank is up to 39 from 76 a decade ago, which is good, but still behind countries like Malaysia and Turkey. And while Bengaluru gets compared to Silicon Valley, its actual S&T cluster rank is 56th versus Silicon Valley's 6th. Much lower patent rates, fewer publications per capita.
And the leading patent filer in Bengaluru isn't even an Indian company.
It's Samsung Electronics, according to the article. The author is critical of focusing on, quote, new apps that hawk food products instead of deep indigenous technology, which needs indigenous science, which needs quality education free from political agendas.
Pretty harsh critique overall, even questioning the role of the University Grants Commission.
Yes, calls the UGC an instrument of control and asks if it's relevant to industry or skilling, suggesting India might be better off without it. It ends with a rather pointed Asimov quote about stupidity and patriotism.
Okay, quite a critical perspective there.
Yeah.
Let's move to our third piece, which sounds a bit more positive. It's about an NGO.
Yes, the Unnati Foundation in Bengaluru. They were actually the first NGO listed on India's social stock exchange back in 2023.
Social stock exchange, how does that work for an NGO? We'll get to that. First, what does Unnati do?
They focus on getting young people ready for the workforce. Their main program is this intensive 35-day training, and they guarantee a job placement in a corporate company afterwards, apparently with a 100% success rate so far.
That's impressive. What kind of training?
It covers practical skills, but also behavior, communication, grooming, sort of holistic development. The founder was inspired after witnessing the Bhopal gas tragedy, wanting to contribute to society.
And how did they grow?
They started small, but then scaled up through a separate foundation arm and with support from Axis Bank. Now they have about 50 centers in 7 states.
And they have another program, too, UNXT.
Right. Started in 2018. It's a free CSR-funded program, about 165 hours. It specifically targets the low placement rates you see in government colleges, often below 10%.
So it focuses on those soft skills again.
Exactly. Communication, confidence, attitude, continuous learning. They trained over 1.26 lakh youth in 2024 across 12 states, aiming for 2 lakh next year. And the cost is incredibly low, about $1,600 on a person.
That's very efficient. Are they doing anything else?
They're launching a portal, Udyogam. It'll feature video resumes of the UNXT trainees. The idea is to help companies, especially smaller businesses in towns and villages, find local talent more easily.
What kind of jobs are these young people getting?
Through the main center program, it ranges logistics, hospitality for those with less education, up to retail sales, BPO, finance roles for others. With the UNXT program, about 30–35% currently find jobs, often admin roles or factory work for those with technical training.
And who are they primarily helping?
The stats are quite clear. 81% are from SC/ST/OBC backgrounds, and over 90% from rural areas. So really focusing on inclusivity.
Now back to the social stock exchange listing. What's the benefit for Unnati?
Credibility, transparency, a way to showcase their impact. It's different from a regular stock exchange, obviously. When someone donates through the SSE, they get a zero coupon, zero principal, or ZCZP instrument in their account.
Zero coupon, zero principal.
Meaning it yields no interest and the principal isn't returned. It's purely a donation. Once Unnati completes the work funded by that donation and reports it, the instrument value becomes zero. It's a formal way to track donations and impact. The minimum donation was recently lowered, too, to just $1,000.
So it's like a verified donation mechanism.
Essentially, yes. And listing again requires raising more funds and involves monitoring by SEBI and the NSE. Unnati believes it's going to become really important for NGOs, maybe like the DARPAN ID needed for CSR funding now. It's still early days for the SSE, but they're pioneers.
Interesting development. Okay, Article 4 takes us into the right to repair movement in India.
Yeah, focusing on electronics and a proposed repairability index, or RI. The Department of Consumer Affairs has received a report outlining a framework for this.
So the idea is to score products based on how easy they are to fix.
Exactly. Things like, can you get spare parts?
Yeah.
How much do repairs cost? Are software updates available long-term? Is repair information actually accessible? It would give consumers a clearer picture up front.
The article mentions planned obsolescence. Is that the main driver here?
It touches on the feeling that newer things break faster than old ones. But it also notes that rising metal prices and competition might just mean companies are, cutting costs on materials.
Yeah.
Less metal in appliances, for instance.
Which makes repair even more important if things aren't built to last as long, especially if India relies on importing metals.
Right. And it ties into the idea of a circular economy, keeping products in use longer, reducing e-waste, lessening demand for new mining. But the article suggests the main driver is probably just consumers wanting stuff that lasts longer and is fixable, particularly as tech leaps in things like phones have slowed down a bit.
How is India approaching this compared to, say, the U.S.?
The article describes India's current approach as pretty non-confrontational. There's a government portal listing authorized repair centers and providing some literature from manufacturers.
So working with manufacturers.
Seems like it. It contrasts with the U.S. movement, which is often more adversarial, pushing back against companies that restrict access to parts or penalize you for using a third-party repair shop.
The McDonald's ice cream machine example.
Yeah, where only the manufacturer's technicians can fix them, apparently quite often. The Indian framework seems keen on scoring products without causing any impediment to the industry, which sounds like trying to find a middle ground.
But manufacturers often want the repair business, right?
They do. That's a revenue stream they might lose if third-party repair becomes easier. So they've opposed some U.S. legislation.
The committee drafting India's RI framework, who was on it?
Mostly industry groups and manufacturers, but also a consumer rights advocate, Pushpa Jaramaji, who actually supports third-party repair.
Yeah.
So the outcome might not be entirely tilted towards the manufacturer's view. We'll have to see how it plays out.
Okay, on to trade tensions now. Article 5. India planning retaliatory tariffs against the U.S.
Yes, this is in response to the U.S. raising import duties on steel and aluminum to 25% back in February 2025. India has notified the WTO it plans to hit back on about $7.6 billion worth of U.S. imports.
This comes just as they're supposedly talking about a trade deal.
Yeah, it complicates things a bit. India's measures could kick in 30 days after their WTO notification, which was May 9th.
These U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs aren't entirely new, are they?
No, they started under Trump in 2018. But the February 2025 modification was key. It removed most country and product exemptions, making it a broader 25% tariff.
When the U.S. says it's for national security.
That's their justification. They declined India's request for formal talks about it in April. But India disagrees strongly.
How so?
India argues these are basically safeguard measures, temporary protections for domestic industry, but weren't properly notified or justified under WTO rules, specifically JTT 1994 and the Agreement on Safeguards.
And because the U.S. didn't hold the required consultation?
India claims the right to retaliate, to suspend concessions on U.S. products, effectively raising tariffs on them, to compensate for the impact of the U.S. tariffs.
How much are they looking to compensate?
They calculate the U.S. tariffs collect about $1.91 billion in duty on $7.6 billion of Indian steel and aluminum. India's proposed measures aim to collect an equivalent amount from U.S. goods coming into India. Tit for tat, essentially.
Has India done this before?
Yes. In June 2019, they put higher tariffs on 28 U.S. products after the U.S. removed India from a preferential trade program, GSP, and kept the original 2018 steel and aluminum tariffs. Those Indian retaliatory duties were eventually withdrawn in September 2023.
So there's precedent for these disputes flaring up and then cooling down again.
Exactly. It's part of the ongoing negotiation and sometimes confrontation in international trade.
All right, our 6th article is quite grim. It's the verdict in the Pollachi sexual assault case.
Yes, a very serious and disturbing case. 9 men were arrested about 6 years ago. They were accused of blackmailing, sexually assaulting, and filming young women in Pollachi, near Coimbatore, between 2016 and 2018.
And the verdict?
On May 13th, the Mahila court in Coimbatore found all 9 guilty. They've been sentenced to life imprisonment. The court also ordered the Tamil Nadu government to pay 85 lakh in total compensation to 8 survivors.
How did this all come to light?
It started when a 19-year-old college student filed a complaint in February 2019. She reported being sexually abused by 4 men in a car. She was the first to speak out against this group.
And her complaint uncovered a wider pattern.
Yes. The investigation found they'd allegedly been doing this since 2016, luring women, assaulting them, and crucially, filming the acts to blackmail them or exploit them further. Police found numerous videos on their phones and laptops.
Horrific. Was it investigated locally at first?
Initially, yes, by the state crime branch CID. But given the scale and public outrage, the case was transferred to the Central Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, in April 2019.
And the CBI identified these 9 accused.
Correct. The investigation showed one man was key in luring the victims, who were often from middle-class or lower socioeconomic backgrounds. The first complainant was also robbed after being assaulted and filmed, and she reported it after they threatened to leak the video.
Were there many victims?
It's suspected many more were victimized, but only 8 testified. Fear was a major factor, especially fear of their identities being revealed, which tragically happened in one instance due to a leak, reportedly by a police official.
How was the trial handled to protect them?
They used a special courtroom with one-way glass so the survivors wouldn't have to see the accused directly, who appeared via video link. Extreme care was taken in bringing survivors to court.
Was there a political angle?
Yes, it gained notoriety because one accused had held a position in the student wing of the AIADMK party, though he was expelled later. It added another layer of complexity and public attention to an already awful case.
A truly difficult subject. Okay, our final article brings us back to trade, but from a different angle, the impact of a U.S.-China tariff pause.
Right. This looks at the ripple effects on those China plus one countries, places like Vietnam, Mexico, that have actually benefited from companies shifting supply chains out of China to avoid earlier, really high U.S. tariffs.
Those tariffs got pretty extreme.
Yeah, the article mentions reaching an embargo like 145% on some Chinese goods. So countries with lower tariffs, Vietnam at 46%, Thailand 36%, Malaysia 24% naturally looked more attractive for manufacturing.
But now there's a pause.
A breakthrough in U.S.-China talks led to a 90-day reprieve from those sky-high tariffs. There's still a base 30% import tax on Chinese goods, which is higher than other places, but it's much lower than 145%.
So the worry is this might slow down the shift away from China.
That's the concern some experts have. The sheer uncertainty around U.S. tariff policy, especially with potential changes in administration, makes companies hesitant to commit fully to relocating.
Did the earlier tariffs actually lead to much reshoring to the U.S.?
Not really, according to this piece. It mainly led companies to look for alternatives outside the U.S. with lower costs and tariffs, hence the benefit to Southeast Asia and Mexico.
So if this U.S.-China pause gets extended,
Then the relative advantage of being a China plus one location might shrink. Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia are apparently negotiating their own deals with the U.S. now, trying to lock in favorable terms. Mexico is trying to reduce duties too.
could companies just hedge their bets? Keep some operations in China and some elsewhere?
That seems possible. This U.S.-China thaw, even if temporary, might encourage companies to maintain their core in China while just making partial moves. The unpredictability is the real killer for long-term planning.
And for countries like Vietnam, which even attracted Chinese manufacturers moving to avoid U.S. tariffs.
Exactly. This puts more pressure on them to secure good trade terms with the U.S. to stay competitive as an alternative. Trade tensions have already apparently slowed new foreign investment pledges in Vietnam.
What about Mexico? They have the USMCA trade deal.
Right, that gives them a big advantage with mostly tariff-free access to the U.S. market, although there are still some specific tariffs. Experts quoted think that even with the U.S.-China pause, companies will remain cautious about relying too heavily on China, so Mexico might still benefit long-term.
So a lot of moving parts in global supply chains reacting to these policy shifts.
Definitely. Constant adaptation and response, just like those crickets, but on a global economic scale.